Hey everybody, it is maple syrup time, and Kat and I are back from last week when we just talked amongst ourselves. But this time we thought we'd bring a friend. So, Kat, who do we bring?
We brought Jason Anarchy.
Welcome,
Hello.
Jason.
Yeah, thanks
Hi,
for
Uh,
having me.
Jason.
yeah, for knowing you for a very long time, Jason and I have known each other for years and years and years. This is the first time you've been on the show, so welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Whenever usually around 9 Eastern, that's when my kids go to bed, and then I'm back on my computer and doing more work or whatever. Um, and so I usually catch the beginning of your show, and it's just nice to have on in the background. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's a real privilege to be on right now, and I always find that there's a lot of relatable designer content where it's like, I can really specifically appreciate a lot of this stuff, and so it's nice to hear.
And the main
Excellent.
reason that we've got Jason here actually is because Jason was kind enough to actually invite us to be part of his whole booth experience at PAX West recently. And so we got badges, which meant that we didn't have to stand in lines. Love that.
Oh yeah,
And we also
and you
got
were
to
kind
have a
enough to
fun
help at
booth.
the booth. You were an absolute rock
Yeah.
star there.
I mean, that was the big thing that we really wanted, and so we both got good stuff out of that because obviously Jason got people to help, and we got to learn how to do it. So George and I both have quite a bit of experience with craft markets and things like that, but very little experience doing booths for board games, and so it's really interesting to see the different audiences, how they interact with you, how they interact with different products. And we also got to experience some other cool things that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But first of all, we'd love to know your origin story, Jason. It's
Yeah,
probably
absolutely.
quite a cool one.
So the year was 2011. Um, so I was working in the newspaper industry at what was like a pretty good job, but I wasn't like particularly passionate about it. Like we'll call it a generic office job. Um, and it was the newspaper industry, and I was pretty young, and I was like, there's not much of a future here, and I don't really like this.
Called
Um,
it.
and so I was at a wedding. I was at a friend's wedding, and me and a bunch of friends were drunk off scotch at the end of the night. And the end of the night, my one friend, who doesn't say a lot, but when he says something, it's often very profound. He's like, "Hey, you're always making these RPGs to play with your friends and drinking beer. You should make a game an RPG that incorporates beer into it." And I was like, yeah, whatever. But then I was commuting to work, a day or two later. I was like, wait a minute, okay, hold on, I could do this. Just as a hobby, I've been designing games like since I was a kid, and I think I'm funny. So I'm like, okay, it could be a decent game, and it could be funny, and it could be like a drinking RPG. So that turned into Drinking Quest, the original drinking RPG, which released at the very end of 2011. Um, and then I had this crazy plan to like cold call gaming stores, hobby stores, and just one on one get the game out there. But on the first day that I had them, I just ran a Facebook ad, and then people were just ordering them all over the world, and it just kind of blew my mind. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that other stuff because this is working. And then I've been kind of riding that momentum ever since.
Excellent. So the first game was Drinking Quest, hence the whole URL,
Yeah.
drinkingquest.com. So if you want to find Jason's stuff, go to www.drinkingquest.com.
Okay.
And
That's what I was like, I've got to look that up and send it to you. But no, you
Yep.
got it.
And JasonAnarchyGames.com or mostofmygames.com will lead you to the same site. So
there you go. And so Jason, you've been making games like you make like what, one a year almost?
No, I was doing one a year to start, and then I started doing two a year, and then now it's gonna be like I don't know, three or four, maybe within the next
Wow.
year. It's just it's crazy. So it's yeah. When I came out with the first Drinking Quest, it's like the big secret, the big thing I'm admitting is I don't really like drinking games.
Right.
So it's like Drinking Quest was half RPG and half drinking game. So the amount of drinking there's not actually a lot of it, but the main mechanic is that when your RPG hero dies, you chug your entire drink. So it's like a big deal when it happens, and it accents the RPG gameplay. And so I kind of designed it so there was a pacing mechanism, so no one's going to pass out after 10 minutes or anything like that, which is kind of the inherent flaw with most drinking games. So it's kind of most drinking games are just drink as much as you can as fast as you can. So I wanted people to get to the end of the game. I didn't want people to go to the hospital, and I wanted a game that I would reasonably like to play. So once I came up with, the Drinking Quest game has 4 different quests. There's a maximum of 1 entire drink chug per quest. Then there was like a range of 0 to 4 chugs per game over the course of about an hour. And then I'm like, okay, this is a doable idea now. So, but at the same time, even though I knew the first game was an indie hit, I didn't want to pigeonhole myself as like just the drinking guy. Or a lot of people have asked me for Weed Quest over the years, and I haven't done that. So I don't want to be the Vice guy either. So I think I think the gameplay is great, but I think the strongest aspect of most of my games is the comedy writing. So that's kind of how I wanted to stand out from the beginning. So even though Drinking Quest was a hit, I wanted to make a point of kind of coming out with a lot of really different stuff, but it's always funny, and I always want it to be funny for a different reason.
Yeah,
And
so
you,
your games always have that irreverence to it, right? They're not like serious games for serious folk. They're fun games for fun people.
Yeah.
Why are all your games so fun? Why are all your games about fun topics, funny things? Is it like because you think that that'll sell? Is it you'd rather not make any games that are serious? What is it?
Oh, there's a few reasons. Yeah, all of the above, kind of. So in terms of game selling, I think if anyone's going to self-publish anything, I think with when you're creating something, there's a creative kind of point of view where it's like, oh, I need to care about the art. I can't care about the money. But it's like, no, no. If you're self-publishing your creation, you need to care about both. But you don't need to sacrifice one for the other. You find a coincidence of, okay, this is a good thing that I'm happy with that I want to make, and then also this is something I reasonably believe that other people would enjoy. So I think a lot of people can have that battle in their head, but I always tell people, and just find the coincidence of two things, because creativity is unlimited. There's always a solution to whatever problem, and just find that coincidence. In
Like
terms
cats and humans, for example.
like cat versus human, yeah, yeah. Like I really just wanted to make a game where we just go over it. So that game, which is this is the first time it's been visible anywhere. Pizza Cake Comics does the artwork. I'm a big fan of hers, so it's been a great privilege to work with her. But yeah, that game, it's you just play as cats just trying to annoy humans, and it just keeps escalating more and more. And it's got a good, quick and easy to learn and original kind of gameplay loop that I'm excited to get out there. But kind of my house style with every game is, joke per card, or
Right.
multiple reasons per card of why it's funny. And I think the thing that stands out is that it's a lot of pre-scripted stuff. And usually what you find with board games is, setting things up for the players to be funny, which is also good, but it's just a completely different thing that you're going for. So I find when you have pre-scripted humor, when you have, the cards are inherently funny, whether the players are or not, it can lead to, people not feeling like they're on the spot, maybe if they don't want to play a social game.
Right.
Um, and if you don't actually get to play the game, you're flipping through the cards of this game you bought. It's like, okay, there's some kind of value there if you got a few laughs out of that kind of thing.
Right.
And then also, I try and put in so many little details and jokes that even though it's pre-scripted, you can still play multiple times and not get everything right away.
Mhm.
And that's what I was worried about with the first Drinking Quest, but I've never had anyone tell me, "Oh, the jokes got old," or anything like that. So that was never a complaint that I've gotten. But back to the irreverence, there was one more big point I wanted to say with that. So outside of games, my other big passion is music. I'm a big fan of punk rock, and when I started Jason Anarchy Games, I kind of based it off of Fat Records, which is like an indie punk rock label.
Mhm.
And I would describe Fat Records as kind of like being at the top of the underground and not really having much of a way to go past that, but they're very good at what they do. They've got steady popularity. And the guy who owns Fat Records, Fat Mike, very much, he's got a funny public persona, and he treats his employees well. He just wants to run business the way he wants to do it without all the usual business BS. And I really liked all that. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I can do that kind of with board games. I can take a few cues from there. Because I think when like a company with a name and a company with a logo, I think you can get away with one good degree of irreverence, like really looking like you don't care. You can't do it too much. It can't be
Right.
too over the top, because then it's not professional. But I feel like that 1 degree where you kind of make people kind of cock their head and be like, wait a minute, if you get people thinking about it, then that's an interesting thing to figure out. Where it's like,
So you're saying you're professionally irreverent.
I like that. Yeah, I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna use that from now on.
Professionally irreverent. There you go.
Right.
Okay, so Kat, how did you get in touch with Jason?
I actually, this game above us here is how I found out about Jason. Or not this one, actually. It was the other Tiny Snake game.
Oh,
Because I've been following Tiny Snake for a really long time.
Right.
And then, there's an announcement, oh, I've made a board game. And I was like, well, damn, I like board games. So I backed it on Kickstarter. And then there was another one. I was like, I like this too. And then I happened to see the booth. And Jason wasn't actually there at the time. But I went and I was like, well, hi anyway. And then I messaged him afterwards like, yo, I came to say hi, but you weren't there. And we chatted. And then I guess I did what I do. And I just sort of was like, hey, you're one of the people I come say hi to at conventions now. And then I saw a post where Jason was like, hey, does anyone want to help me at PAX West? And I was like, yep. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want to do. And so we really haven't actually spoken that much until we did the booth together, which was pretty neat. It was good times. So a lot of what I'm hearing I haven't heard before, which is fun. So it's like, what else don't I know about you, Jason? What else can I find
So
out?
much. There's so
Oh, I've
much.
got stories. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
No,
That's
that's one
like,
of my.
yep. This is going to be an
That's
easy
one thing
one.
I
We can
really
just
like.
get started.
Yeah. Yeah, because we didn't really know each other at all, and then at PAX West, we basically like, all right, we're gonna spend 3 straight days together, and it was great fun, and you and George were both wonderful, and that's one thing I like about this industry and like traveling for conventions. So it's like, there aren't a lot of people that I would say have my designer and like indie publisher kind of model, but anyone who does, it's like you kind of have to find the little shortcuts where you can, because if you're one person publisher or 2-person publisher, the people power is very limited. So you need the help when you can get it, especially at conventions. And yeah, similar to Kat and George, I've got stories of conventions where I just take a chance on sharing a hotel room with someone or traveling with someone or doing this. And in most cases, you just make a great friend out of it, and it's been pretty amazing. So.
Mm-hmm. And so you were at PAX West, and Kat and George said, yes, we'll help you out. And what happened next?
Yeah, I think I said like I'll give you some exhibitor passes, for X number of hours at the booth, kind of thing, and
Yeah.
then yeah.
Yeah, we get there and Jason's like, oh, just give us as much time as you think it's worth. And we're like, no, you don't understand. We're here to work the convention so we can learn about working the convention. He's like, I don't want to take the piss. Like, like you only have to work a little bit. And we're like, no, that's what we're here for. You're doing us a huge favor. So it was really cool because we got to actually be there for the immense setup. That was so complex.
Yeah, that's fun to see behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's funny because I just recently was at Gen Con filming, like part of my job was actually to film with time lapse the setup of the Catalyst booth, which was on its second day when I started filming. And I got like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday film of setup for the Catalyst booth. And then I come to PAX West, and before I've even started filming any kind of time lapse, the booth is basically done because it was pretty much assemble like 4 signs, hang another one on the wall, and put the game on the table, or put a couple of. I think did you start with 5 games out?
I started with 5, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anyone's listening that is looking to start doing a booth or looking to improve their booth, or simplify their booth, I guess I'm a good person to talk to. So basically, that was like my carry-on luggage booth setup. So not every game will be like this, but with my games, they're usually some kind of high concept, and the concept gets people interested. So I put whatever the concept is on a roll-up banner. So 1 roll-up banner per game is usually all I need. So for example, Drinking Quest it's a drinking game and a tabletop RPG. And I've had that same slogan, for 13 years, and it's worked fine. And then Cheese Factory, it's what is it? um, choose a chef,
Oh yeah, there. Choose a,
build the
choose a chef, build a factory, make the
that's
cheese,
it,
burn it all down.
burn it all down. Yeah, so you have some art, you have a tagline, you get people interested in wanting to walk up to the booth. Because one thing, before I got into the industry, I was always that guy that didn't want to get too close to the booth because as soon as you make eye contact, someone's going to draw you in and try and sell you something. So I've always assumed everybody is like that, and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't want to scare people with my intense eye contact. So it's like, all right, I'll draw them to the booth, by telling them about the game, and if they're interested, they'll come up and they'll chat. And then because I do comedy games, I usually just have a display of like what's in the box on the table. So traditionally, with like a lot of vendor booths, you just have as many products as possible on the table. But I usually have about 4 to 5 specific games at any given convention, because if I can just show it off and show how the game's funny and how it works and people laugh at the cards, that's usually enough. Um, and then, kind of against industry wisdom, I don't run any games at the booth ever. And I've only ever had a few situations where I was officially running games in any capacity. And that's mostly due to when I started, I was literally just one guy going to the convention, doing every job. And I did that for years. And then eventually, okay, I've got a pretty good network of people that can help out once in a while when I need it and things like that. But I had like a really minimalist setup. And then also Drinking Quest was half drinking game, so I couldn't do that at most conventions.
Right.
So it was what wasn't the that's not the
It's
ideal setting.
yeah.
So
It's also really hard to like demo role playing games in general, right?
yeah, like it's pretty. It's the bare minimum role playing game that still fits the basic definition. I feel like, but it's very entry level board game ish. So it's I tell people a few of the mechanics, I show them the cards, and that's basically how I do sell any board game at the booth. I'm enthusiastic about it, but I don't put on a lot of pressure. I kind of let people decide on their own terms, and so I assume everyone's like me. They hate eye contact. They hate being sold to, but they like cool games. So that's kind of been my approach to that.
Is that part of your design ethos? Like approachable, humorous games that sell themselves?
Yeah, it's for sure. It's another way that I assume everyone is like me. And again, it's not going to be always accurate. Is when I get together to play board games, it's unless it's a convention with other designers, I'm rarely in a room with other hardcore board game players. Um, and it's usually just me and friends I haven't seen in a while, and we want to catch up and hang out as much as we want to play a few board games. And so I kind of use that as a basis because we've got low to moderate attention spans
Right.
on those nights, and we've had a lot of nights where we're excited to play big box game that we slam on the table, and they've spent 3 hours trying to learn it, and then we don't play. So I try and do the opposite of that.
Right.
So it's like, I want them to be pretty simple, but I want to have a lot of replayability. Drinking Quest is fun, but it's very low skill. My other games are definitely higher skill because the drinking gimmick isn't there. But in general, it's I try and use randomness as like a setup tool. I know the industry is very against randomness in games. So you got your random setup in most games that I've done, and it's up to player choices after that to kind of figure out what they do with that. And
I quite
so,
like
yeah,
randomness. Like the
it,
use of randomness, particularly in lighter games. I've noticed a lot of particularly North American designers get very angry about randomness being involved at all. And I'm like, no,
yeah,
no, just use it the right way. Let it be there. It's
Well,
fun.
okay, let's have a talk. Let's have
using
a
it the
talk
right
about
way.
that,
Yeah,
right? So I think it depends on what the players want out of the game or what they expect out of the game. I think there's expectations, right?
for sure.
So if you spend all your time making this grand strategy and
And then it
collecting
randomly
all these things,
explodes in your face after
yeah,
two
then that
hours.
doesn't feel too good, right? But
Yeah.
oddly enough, you could spend all that time doing all this grand strategy, building an army and painting miniatures and have that all blow up in your face based on the roll of a dice too. It's expectations, right? And then
Yeah,
also what kind of mechanisms, if randomness could be considered a mechanism. I mean, it's like maybe a sub category of a mechanism that suits the game, right? So if I was to read a game, a title, Cat versus Human, I would probably think there's some random effects in there. I would probably think that. Cheese Factory, maybe not, but it's also, the tagline says, and then burn it all down. It's like, okay, we're in for a fun time, and random sometimes is fun, just like quirky things that come up, right?
Yeah,
Whereas if it's like, this is an empire building game that simulates the rise of the Roman Empire, it's like randomness, maybe not as much. There might be
yeah,
some random elements. So I think just like any other mechanism or any other part of a game, it's got to really support the end experience. Um, because yeah, definitely there's games where I will totally accept randomness, and there's games where it's like that maybe shouldn't be here. But
yeah.
there's
But
games like
that's quite unusual, Sen. Like most of the designers I've spoken to react allergically to randomness at all, and I'm like, no, randomness has its place.
because
Randomness
they
is an
they they
extremely useful
don't
tool. Use it
understand
correctly, it's
Yeah,
excellent.
randomness.
it's a
They
very
also don't
toxic
understand
word right now.
balance.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
uh,
balance is very important.
Hmm.
And I don't know. When I think about randomness, I think of Sen. You had your list of like designer pointers that you posted a while ago, and
oh, my if I
We'll
if
talk
I
about
actually
this
got to
with
play your
them.
games, here's what I'd say.
yeah,
That
yeah,
one?
that's the
Yeah.
one. And I remember reading that, and I was like, oh, all these things are great, and it really struck a chord with me. And I can't remember the exact wording, but you had something on there to the effect of don't try and be innovative about literally everything. Familiarity is also important. And when I think of randomness, I think of that because it's always a part of nearly any game anyway.
Yeah,
Well,
But
it's
it's
yeah.
just the
familiar.
degree and how it's used, and it just has to fit what you're doing.
Right. So another Canadian designer, because bunch of Canadians on here except for Kat. Uh, Eric Lang will say stuff like, "I hope you all realize and he won't say you stuck up, pretentious game design snobs, but that's who he's talking to. That the biggest selling games in the world are all like random and have player elimination and have you lose a turn and have all these things that hobby game designers absolutely hate. And if you're building a hobby game, fine, don't have those in there. But if you people are less averse to it than hobby game designers think. And I think this is you said it yourself, I think this way, so I hope other people think this way too. And I think we're all like that. We all have a little bit of egocentric behavior and thinking patterns around how we
For
live our
sure.
lives, right? Because it just helps us actually make decisions faster. That's all bias really does. And so when we have a bias, we assume everybody has that bias unless we really examine and say, I guess not everybody's like that. And so that's all Eric is calling out. He's saying, look, 99% of the games that are sold in the world, because if you took everything of Uno and Monopoly and put them together, it would utterly destroy the whole entire hobby market in terms of sales, right? So they know something.
Yeah, yeah, that's
There's something
true.
Yeah.
about randomness. There's something
I mean,
about
I was
those
I
fun
was
things.
teaching kids design and I gave them some extra stuff that was out there, but I mean, realistically, they're playing what they know, and what they know is roll and move, and what they know is randomness, and what they know is take that, and what they know is like, you know, you're probably going to lose this because bad stuff keeps happening. You haha, you rolled a 6 and you go back to the start or whatever. And I'm like, okay, how can you make that a little bit more interesting for the like the fifth time you play it? How can you do
Mhm.
this? How can you do that? But working within their known structure is still okay. Like,
Yeah. I
and
think
that doesn't
there's
mean that everyone who does games with randomness in them is making another Candyland either. Like
yeah,
there's
so there's an actual fallacy I think that designers fall into because they kind of a lot of designers will say a talking point and repeat it until they believe it, right? And part of it is that's one of them, right? Oh, randomness is bad. And the other opposite of that is like agency is the most important thing. And you can have both, right?
yeah.
When randomness creates an opportunity for you to express agency, how can that be a bad thing? Because you
That's,
Oh,
I
said,
well
think,
said.
pretty much what George has just
"Oh,
said there.
sorry,
It's
George, I
very
didn't
much
see
the
what you're
same.
saying." War games have a comfortable relationship. Yeah, like I'm talking about, like you spent all that time painting those miniatures, building that army. You go out and you blow it up with a couple rounds of dice checking, right? They have a comfortable relationship with randomness because the whole exercise is the management and mitigation of randomness. Also, it's the experience of war is kind of random, right? And so people who've never experienced war
That's why I was
obviously
laughing
don't
when you
know
were
it, but
talking about the
they do that.
Roman Empire, and I'm like, actually, there
Well,
was a
yeah.
whole lot of random stuff that, I mean,
Well,
like,
that's the
this is
thing.
something I
People who
studied,
don't study
so
history don't understand that you change one thing and history would be entirely different. But these random
and a
confluences,
lot
like
of it was
Jason's
super
talking about,
random.
when two things kind of come together,
Yeah, like this
see
one guy
it
died and
all
all of
connects
this other
back.
stuff happened,
It
and
all connects back
oh,
to, this
yeah.
this family merged with that family by marriage. What if that marriage didn't work? Random. What if they didn't have a boy, they had a girl? Kind of random, right? Anyway,
So, Jason,
yeah.
Yeah.
randomness for you. How do you use randomness in your games?
I think well, yeah, finding the mix of randomness and agency, and in the context of a casual game, but you also want to be a replayable hangout game. That's and usually 2 to 4 players is my zone. And again, I kind of base it off my own group, and I'm like, there's got to be enough groups like this in the world. So
I mean, write what
uh,
you know is valid for a reason, right? Like
yeah,
you're not the only person who plays games, but it's a really good idea to play games or to make games that are games that people would like.
for sure. But I'm going to say that the seed of every game always comes from a silly idea. So there's always like kind of like a silly prompt where it's like, what if somebody made a game about this ridiculous idea? What might those mechanics look like? And then, often it won't turn into anything, but sometimes it does. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is like, a AAA game that, for me, okay, this is like a good game for me. I'm not going to say it's a AAA game next to the best stuff out there necessarily. Um, but that's always the seed of it. And, what mechanics kind of fit that? Like Cheese Factory, quite a bit of agency in that game. But it's just kind of randomness, what's displayed on the table. And there's a bit of take that in there too. I don't want to be just talking about randomness, but it's like in that particular game, yeah, it was what was displayed. And I've done that a few times where it's like, okay, there's like a public kind of market on the table that players interact with. And I don't know, it's tough to say. I don't have any like general guidelines, but everything always kind of starts with the seed of a silly idea. What if someone made a game about this ridiculous thing? What are the best mechanics for that? And then, like any playtesting, like any game, it's like you try, a dozen different versions, however many it takes. This mechanic was fun, we'll keep that. These mechanics were not fun, we'll drop those. Someone suggested this, that was a good suggestion, maybe we'll add that. Someone suggested this, that was a bad suggestion. We're going to ignore that one. So it's like, just typical design process stuff.
Playtesting, yeah. So one of the things that you often seem to do, from what I can see, is that you work with comic book artists.
Sure.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I don't know. I've been a big fan of webcomics since like early internet. Ryan North of Dinosaur Comics, I think, is my first webcomic I was ever like really into. He's one of my biggest kind of comedy inspirations. So he's got like a really smart kind of dry sensibility about it, and it's not like a man falls over in the third panel kind of a comic. It's like smart stuff, and you got to be paying attention to it. So I've been reading web comics for years, and in 2016 I reached out to Megan McKay of Doodle for Food. And I was like, oh, hey, I'm a game designer. Hey, I've got this idea for a game. I'll pay X amount of dollars to this amount of art. I was like, okay, great. And then we made Pretending to Grown Up. And then from there, it was, I would just reach out to webcomic artists and I'll be like, hey, here's the idea I have, here's, what I'm paying, blah, blah, blah. And, but like I'll usually get like a positive response from that. So it's,
So you've usually got a game idea before you reach out to them, and you're just asking them to illustrate it, or
yeah,
like,
that's
is it
exactly it.
inspired by their art?
Yeah, the general theme is like, okay, this will work well with this style of art for sure. Um, so definitely like anybody who wants to collab more beyond art, like I think that's great, and I'm always excited for that. But I assume everybody's busy. I don't want to take up anyone's time because I know how time consuming this all is. So I offer money up front. I have like a solid idea up front that uses their style well. and I'm respectful of their time. So those are maybe three good takeaways if anyone's considering approaching anyone about whatever license kind of thing.
So let's say, for example, I'm a webcomic artist. What would I expect if I got an approach from you? Would you already basically have this shape of a game, and you would be telling me how it connects with my style, and then you'd tell me how
Yeah,
much you're willing to pay and what you're asking for from me, and what then if I agree, you send me a contract and we get moving? Is that what it's like?
yeah. So it's like, okay, so Kat, I love your webcomic about potatoes. I've got this game about
How did
potatoes.
you know?
Yeah. So I've got this game called Space Potatoes, about potatoes in space. I'd like you to draw it. There's going to be 60 cards with unique illustrations. I'll give you the outlines of what should be on the cards ahead of time. There's a board and there's a cover. I'll pay you X, Y, Z. Um,
I
and
love XYZ.
here's the Canadian version there too with the nice Z there, and and like a rough timeline, but in general, like I'd say about half the artists I work with are late for whatever reason, and I'm not going to say it's on them. It's like I come from this right in the beginning where it's like I'll make it work. Just if something holds you up, that's fine.
Cool.
So yeah, it'd be something like that, and I'll send a list of bullet points, or it's like, hey, here's the general idea, and then that's we just kind of get started, and then I'll send you like outlines for the cards. Like, okay, this card, there's a space potato, and he's being eaten by a space celery, and it's funny because it's like it's a weird horror style that doesn't fit the rest of the game, and it's suddenly very scary. Or another card where it's like the potato in space is slipping on a banana peel, but that doesn't make any sense because there's no gravity in space, or whatever. So stuff like that.
Cool. I
And
like
then
this game. When am I illustrating this game? I love that it's
yeah,
got celery in it already and potatoes. We're both represented.
you have to buy the space celery expansion though to get the celery. I'm sorry, but
Okay.
that's
Also, I didn't
unfortunate.
actually notice that you said Z because I say Z.
And
I
I
was
say
just
Z.
Oh
laughing
right.
because
We're
we're
a bunch
often
of we're a
tagging it
bunch of
by
Z
Z. And
people.
then I'm like,
So Jason, when you are signing in an artist, you're not necessarily signing to make a game for their specific webcomic.
Yeah. So the way I approach it is this. So Kat's fake webcomic is you know
Not space potatoes,
non-space potatoes.
but about potatoes.
So I would approach Kat and be like, okay, we're not going to call it non-space potato the game, because people that like your comic already, they'll love it, but no one else would get it. And I've got a few examples to back this up, even though I try and mitigate this as much as I can. So, using this great style of potato drawing, we would make a very funny game about potatoes. Fans of the comic would recognize the art anyway, and we have like a logo on the back or the side, but maybe not right on the front cover, because there is an element of people thinking, oh, I need to understand something before I play this, or I won't get the joke.
Hmm.
An example of that, and I really went out of my way to mitigate this with a game called Your Friend Is Sad, with Shen Comics. And I didn't have Shen Comics on the front. I think I had like a credit, a game by Shen and Friends, which I didn't, in plain text. I didn't think it would turn anybody off. And I knew Shen was so popular that I didn't even put my name on the cover like I usually do. I'm like, you got this one, Shen. So I sent a copy. I didn't send a copy. I ran into the Dice Tower people, and I gave them a copy of Your Friend Is Sad at a convention. And then it ended up being on a video. And I think the bulk of what they said was that it's like, oh, we don't get the webcomic. And so I'm not sure what we're supposed to.
they don't
It
get
wasn't
the
like, hey, it's a fun
Shin
game. You should
webcomic.
check this out. It's a terrible game. We don't like the mechanics. It was mostly like, oh, well, we don't get the webcomic ahead of time. I'm not familiar with it. And then that was the bulk of what they talked about. I'm
But,
like, no, that would have been amazing if they said a
but
nice
that
thing about it.
webcomic is episodic and super easy to understand.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, but I think Shen is so popular and his comics have been so memed over and over again that just most people like recognize the style, even if they don't know why. And I think that's what happened there, because they saw that and they
How
knew, they
strange.
recognized the style enough to know that it was a thing from the internet, but they
Yeah.
hadn't sat there and like read 10 comics in a row or anything like
That's
that.
interesting. So, how long ago was that?
That was a few years ago. Yeah, that's
Oh,
And nothing
Fascinating.
against the Dice Tower people at all.
No.
Like, just
No,
go there
it's
and be
just
honest
such an
and do what you
interesting
do. Like,
human thing to do. I've had the same reaction. I've looked at things and gone, oh, like even just with like Marvel movies and things like
Sure.
that, I
I
think,
guess that's not for me
no,
because
I
I
don't
don't
have
know the
all the
lore.
lore. I'm not going to go to this. And
Fascinating.
it's taken a long time for me to just be like, you know what, whatever, I'm just going to go and I don't care. And if there's something I really don't understand and George feels like it, he can explain it, but I'm just going to go. It'll be fine.
Humans are
But there are
interesting
a
like
lot
that.
of things like that where I'm just like,
So
so you're
we do
right,
the
that's
same
the human
thing
thing.
in a way, right? Because I mean, Off the Page Games is very, very, very strictly indie comics, right? Indie comics make them into board games, but we don't actually say that to anybody because Jay is and just like you, Jason says, the other Jason says, yeah, but you know, what if people don't know or don't like that artist or don't like comics? Like, it's just a good game, and I'm saying that because Dice Tower obviously, you know, they highly rate, you know, Mind Management and Harrow County and all the games we've made. And a lot of them will go, and I went and bought the comics afterwards, right?
oh,
Or I went and read the comics afterwards because the game was so good. So I think what's happening is I think there's a change
Yeah.
in the air about some types of things. Like it's like, oh, this is based on a comic? Cool, let's go read that comic.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
you're right, maybe Shen is just that much more recognizable as like, I remember these memes. I didn't like the memes, so I'm not gonna like the game. I don't know. It's weird.
Or I don't. Maybe they just didn't understand the memes, and there's just a lot of deep fried kind of meme garbage on the internet, right? Like, it wouldn't surprise me.
For sure, that
Um,
aren't even the original comic.
that's
Or
what it
they're
would
the
be in
original
most
comic, but
cases.
the
Yeah.
words have
That's,
been
I
changed,
think,
right?
the thing. There are multiple layers of memes over the top of that particular comic that have nothing to do actually with the comic in a lot of ways. They're just like XKCD. Oh, I got it. I remembered all four of the letters, didn't I?
Yeah.
That's hard to do
I
sometimes.
think that
Yeah,
might be the
I don't
first
think I
time.
can do that.
Yeah.
But
Um,
their illustrations get used in other stuff. And
Yes, of
because they're
course.
quite cerebral anyway, a lot of people sort of go about those ones quite a bit, I've noticed. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
But
great.
it is a fascinating world. Web comics are so popular, so popular. Like
yeah,
it's basically an untapped kind of gold mine, or it could be an untapped gold mine,
I
depending
wouldn't
on
say
how you treat them.
untapped necessarily,
Mm,
but I feel like in the early
Less
days,
tapped.
I was getting the impression that literally no one was offering these people money in any form, um, and
Well,
that they
it's
were having
true.
trouble making it a full-time gig. I
Yeah.
yeah.
think it's gotten a little easier over time,
Yes.
in regards to things like Patreon,
Mhm.
and
And
they can get like a
merchandising, people
monthly
have
amount of
learned
money
that.
coming in.
Well,
Um,
I mean, that's what a board game is. It's merchandising, really, when you think about
yeah,
it, right?
yeah,
It's
exactly.
like
Yeah.
it's like a brand extension. So, I think you know, if you like the web comics and you know that some of those web comics have like millions of readers
Yeah,
who are just
and
waiting for
so
something.
so it definitely there used to be a situation where webcomics and just social media in general had more reach, and I felt this too because social media was a big part of my early plan. I had 1 year of everyone saw every post that I posted on Facebook,
And now,
and that was incredible. I think that that might have been an important part of my early success
Like
because
2012 or something.
yeah, that's exactly it.
It
And it
feels
was
like the right year.
and then the algorithm hit Facebook, and then the algorithm hit Twitter, and then the algorithm hit Instagram, and it was like, oh, okay, that's it'll never be that good again. I think that's the only reason people are still on Twitter because they have a lot of followers because of those early days as well. Um, and don't even get me started on Twitter. I only post there occasionally, and I feel really guilty, and I
You've
can't
still
stand
got
it. But
32,000 followers on Facebook, though.
oh, that's true. But it's like I'll post
That's a
something on
lot.
Facebook, and it's like, oh, okay, well, 200 people will like it, or two people will like it. And it's like it's just not a situation where like it's got some value, but it's not what it was. But
Oh, absolutely, yeah, it's this the reach is all gone, and yes, I'm not in any way disagreeing, I'm just like, I mean, still, 32,000, that's pretty good.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
I've got 1,000. I haven't really tried, to be fair, but it's so much harder these days.
yeah, it's I used to intentionally have something one good funny thing on social media every day. And then basically I just I got too caught up in design stuff and running the business and whatever else, and I still post fairly regularly and sometimes every day. But like this week, for example, there's just various things going on, and it's like, okay, I got to get this done, I got to get that done, and working on the new game and this and that, and
Oh, the new game. Yes, tell us about your new game.
so yeah, the Trombone Champ picture might have scrolled by a few times.
Oh, we'll
So
get
that'll
it.
be launching on Kickstarter within a few weeks. And yeah, basically, Trombone Champ, if you're not familiar, was this indie game that kind of came out of nowhere and went viral. And it's kind of like Rock Band, but with the trombone. But instead of like trying to be cool and being a rock star, you're just this wide-eyed dork playing a trombone, and it's amazing. It's so stupidly fun. And so I kept seeing all these viral clips of it. And one thing about me, I'm a strict console gamer. I never play any games on my computers ever, just as like a focus thing, basically.
Right. I'm the same way. I cannot, otherwise then my computer becomes a game machine.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I just want to, when I'm at a computer, I want to be working.
Computer is work
So
machine.
yeah, so
Just
but
like bed is sleep place.
yeah, 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 exactly. Like just the parts of my brain want to be able to associate it correctly. And then so when it went viral, I was like, I want to play this so bad. I broke my rule. I downloaded a game on my computer, and it was like my junky old PC because it wasn't even on Mac yet. And so it's barely running this game. I'm playing it. I'm showing my kids. We all love it. And the great thing about Trombone Champ is that it's better than it needs to be on a lot of levels. So even just with the songs and the trombone playing, that still would have been a great indie game. But it's got this level of humorous lore building, this ridiculous, just nonsense lore that you keep unlocking through the whole game. Just baboon gods fighting over trombone powers, and hot dogs are a big part of the game.
Oh, I like
And
hot dogs.
yeah, and I just remember thinking, I'm like, it didn't need to have this, but it's so much better that it does. And so eventually I just reached out to them like, oh, hey, I'm a board game designer. I do only funny board and card games, and not going to promise the world, but I feel like I could do a good game and put it out there. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we don't think it'll make a lot of money. We're not sure people want this, but we'll give you a meeting. And I'm like, oh, okay. So a few months passed. I'm like, okay, I think I got something good. And I don't normally pitch games based on gameplay. I usually just kind of release it myself and say the general hook. So I kind of went more all out than I normally do with this one. And so they played it, and they were basically like, oh, okay, yeah, no notes, we like this, let's do it. And I was like, okay, that's incredible. Yeah. Part of the reason why I like self-publishing is I don't have to do a lot of like formal pitching like that.
Right.
But I didn't feel like I was like pitching to like a big scary company. It was just we're a two-person team, and we're kind of in the same boat, like being indie publishers a little bit. So yeah, we just hit it off right away, and then yeah, the game basically, a lot of the final files started coming in the last few days. So really excited to get this posted and everything.
And forgive
Amazing.
the pun, but there is another reason that this game resonates with you, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I play resonates. I like that. So in school, I was a bright enough kid. I got good grades, but I wasn't much of a joiner outside of school hours, except in grades 7 and 8. A buddy of mine pressured me to join band, and
Wow.
I played the trombone for 2 years, and we toured schools and did band stuff, so I can legitimately play the trombone. And one of the things I like about it is that it's arguably the funniest instrument, just on its own. It may look silly, but it sounds equally silly. It just fits who I am, I feel like. So I feel like if this next Kickstarter is a big hit, I might have to get a trombone just to have at home and annoy my wife with it. That could be a lot of fun.
I really think it should be part of your video for the Kickstarter.
I think you should play
I think that's really
songs.
very important.
Yeah, maybe I should.
Maybe you
And I
should.
mean, you have trombone camp stories you could tell as well, I'm sure.
Trombone camp.
Like one time at band camp.
Mm-hmm.
One time at trombone camp. Oh man.
So
And it's called Trombone Champ.
Right?
It even almost.
Oh, that
rhymes. It does rhyme.
yeah, trombone
Champ and
camp.
camp.
At
I
trombone
think I
camp.
just came up with your marketing campaign, honestly.
That's all right. Let me get this tagline written down.
Write it down. So I know you're a fan of like punk rock and stuff like that. Are you also a fan of like ska?
The ska in the sense that it's like, a microcosm of punk rock, where it's
Sure.
like, if there's a ska opening band, I always have fun with that. And there's,
Yeah.
a few ska bands I like. So,
Just
oh,
just
you're saying
wondering
I
about the
could join a,
whole.
So it's not the
Well,
brass
I mean
part of
the
it.
the whole
I
the
should join
whole,
a ska band.
yes, you should join us,
Yeah.
or you should have a ska band with like a full brass section
Maybe there could be a
play
ska
in the
band
video.
expansion for Trombone Champ.
That's good. Yeah. The video, yeah, it's about to be put together, and I've got a script. And the great thing about it is that there's so many good songs in the game already.
True.
And one of the songs that you play, so the songs in Trombone Champ aren't like contemporary songs for
No,
the
they're like
most part.
Common
They're just
Tequila.
like, dorky band songs, which kind of adds to the charm. But they've got Happy Birthday to You in there. And the game didn't need this. Having the song Happy Birthday would have been just fine. But they made it Happy Birthday to You, the ska mix. Um, and so on the card in the Trombone Champ game, now there's no actual music in a card game. So we have all kinds of weird music theme stuff, and players are playing cards extending a trombone and like getting combos and things like that.
Mm,
Um, but we've got all the song cards are really big with the song, and there's like relevant artwork and everything. So we've got Happy Birthday to You, and then in brackets the ska mix, which is so ridiculous because it doesn't matter if it's the ska mix or not in a card game where there's no actual
oh
music.
no, it
So
matters.
it just ends up being just another bit of irreverent humor
Just a
there.
little bit of text that is a
Very important.
callback to people who know the game, right?
Yeah, that's exactly
It's
it.
it's it's a love
Exactly it.
letter to the fans of the original video game.
Yeah, and I'm
That's
hoping that
that is good.
and I think this might be the first game I actually basically have like an 8+ game. So even my non-drinking quest games, I usually did 14+ in the past,
Oh, right.
because I kind of started off doing edgier humor, edgy light a little bit, and I have a bunch of games that could probably be a more general group. But if I wasn't designing something for kids inherently, I never wanted to put anything under 14, just because I've got kids, and I don't want to get some parent angry. And but what I realized is that most parents don't care, and they let their kids play anything, and they'll ask me at conventions, they're like, "Can kids play it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, there's one card that has someone holding a drink that looks like it should be alcoholic. That's it." Things like that. I think that game was Heck, that you mentioned earlier, Kat. There was a snake holding a drink that was like drunk at a wedding or something. That was kind of the joke, if you. But it didn't explicitly say it. So I remember telling a parent, warning them about that the
There's
dangerous
a
card one time.
snake with a martini glass. I
Yeah,
apologize.
that's right. They're dangerous when snakes drink. Oh man,
Right?
they can get violent.
Snakes on planes,
Oh
It's
snakes on
I think actually the trombone is quite a good example of how like we intersect in some areas, but there are some areas where you and I just stylistically we're very, very different because I used to play the bass, and I say it that way because I didn't really, it required work and I got bored.
we're talking
But
bass guitar, right?
bass guitar, yes.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I absolutely couldn't handle was a fretless bass. I wanted the rules. I wanted to know where the frets were. And without the frets, it just freaked me out. I really didn't like it. And I think that's a really good sort of way of seeing the difference between like
yeah,
us because we intersect in a lot of ways, but there are areas where I was like, no, I need and Jason's like,
I
no,
mean, yeah,
yeah.
like
Well,
the trombone is kind of a chaos instrument if you think
exactly.
about it,
a
right?
Like
little bit. Yeah, it's you just kind of had to remember general positions, so it's never quite as exact as a lot of
Which
other
is the
instruments.
beauty of it
Yeah,
in a lot of ways. That's why the slide is so nice, right?
when I reached out to the Trombone Champ people, they sent me this video that had like 1 million views, where someone did this like hardcore essay into like the lore of Trombone Champ, and there's this story of like gods and baboons and hot
Right,
dogs.
right, right.
But they analyzed it, and the story actually made sense, even though the game kind of makes it look like it's not making any sense, because the trombone is a unique instrument. So the whole thing with Trombone Champ is the trombone can have both light and dark, but the trombone as an instrument, it has this range where it can. I can't remember the exact wording because I'm a very casual trombone player, but it has the high range and the low range, and normally instruments are one or the other, but the trombone uniquely has both, and it can do the whole spectrum. And so I didn't even know that, having played trombone. I thought that was a really interesting fact. And I'm sure if you just typed it in on YouTube, it'd be one of the first things that came up.
The
If it's the
lore.
thing, I think,
Yeah.
I think it's like what flutes can do as well, where depending on your lip position, you can change octave. I think it might be that, whereas but with the flute, you still have to do that, whereas the trombone can smoothly go through all of that without any changes.
Yeah.
I think it might be that. I vaguely remember this conversation with someone a very long time ago because I also used to play the flute. Um, it feels
I don't know
yeah.
why. I just Googled flute changing octaves, and the next word was hot dogs.
Yes. The
What?
hot dogs are
on?
infecting every silly musical instrument
What
now.
is
It's
going
amazing.
on?
Yeah,
Why
when I
would it be hot dogs?
I don't
Why?
know. I don't know,
okay,
Google.
here's a little side story. When I reached out to the trombone champ people, I'll never forget this. This is one of the funniest things anyone's ever said to me. I'm like, we were near the tail end of the agreement. I'm like, okay, yeah, we're gonna do this. And then Dan from Holy Wow, he said, okay, but the game, it's gotta have baboons and hot dogs. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm way ahead of you on this. And then that was his like one prime directive that he gave me, and I'm like, done and done. It will have both baboons and hot dogs being used very well.
But why? What I want to know is why they're there in the first place, and why when you Google flutes, you also get hot dogs.
Oh, I don't. I really don't know because none of the links that came up had anything to do with hot dogs. But apparently
Maybe it just
somebody's
scared you.
You could like play a hot
somebody
dog
is.
like a flute, maybe. I
I
don't know.
mean,
That'd be
maybe
kind of
somebody
fun.
is talking about that. Oh, I mean, maybe if you drill holes in a hot dog, you can make a hot dog flute.
Hot
I
dog
think that's what
flute.
you're talking about.
That's my ska band
That's
name, actually. Yeah.
revolting.
That's my new ska band.
Hot dog flute. Yeah.
Hot dog flute. I would listen to that band. 10 out of 10 would listen.
That's
Ah,
revolting. But
I'll play
that's a
trombone
game
and hot dog
idea
flute.
for you there, Jason. Hot dog flutes. You can have that. That
That's
fits
a
your
decent
brand. It does
prompt,
not
to
fit
be
mine.
honest. Yeah.
right?
No, I'd feel bad if I made hot dogs a primary thing in another board game after doing this one. That would be.
Why? Hot dogs are like intersectional. Like they fit all of the different things. You can apply hot dogs to almost every topic, as we've just discovered.
Like, is a hot dog a sandwich?
That's
Yeah.
oh no, let's
Let's
not
not
start that one. Yeah,
let's not get into that. It is
we
not a
all
sandwich.
agree it's definitely a sandwich.
What?
Huh?
What? Did we all agree it's definitely a sandwich?
Oh
I don't
no!
know.
Oh, of
Ah,
course
not
it's not a
that.
sandwich. Yeah.
So you've got this one coming soon. Is this one going to be on Kickstarter?
Yeah, that'll be Kickstarter in, I don't know, about 3 weeks, or maybe a different time if it's not. I don't know.
Oh, close.
The nature of Kickstarters, I find, and there are companies that have everything planned 6 months in advance. But I'm not going to say every element of my business, because artwork is always the bottleneck. So once I have the artwork for the game, I can create the assets for the Kickstarter, and I usually do that immediately. And then by then, it's like they're typical like windows of Kickstarter that are good to launch one. So it's like you don't want to launch Christmas Day or anything like that, or usually around Christmas isn't the best time because people are buying physical things that they can get right away. And then like midsummer isn't great because people aren't thinking board games; they're thinking going out into the world and doing stuff when it's nice. So it's sometimes it's very just doing really long days, getting everything ready to have it by a specific deadline really fast. Other times you have a bit more time to prepare, but and often I'll even surprise launch Kickstarters too, which is a weird thing. And I think it just comes from just being indie and low resources and everything. And so it's like I'm not gonna.
Fretless bass.
Oh no.
Fretless bass.
Launching a surprise Kickstarter is a lot like playing a fretless bass, a little bit.
How many Kickstarters have you done, though?
I'm sorry?
That's funny.
How many Kickstarters have you done?
Oh, I think over 10.
Yeah,
maybe
it's
11 or
not
12.
like, you haven't done it before
Over
and
the
you don't know
years.
what's going on. This is like, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing this thing again." I think that's
Yeah.
the stage where you can kinda just be like, yeah, sure. Let's do another one."
Let's do this other one. So,
Yeah.
Jason, is game design and game publishing, it's your full-time gig?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Not playing hot dogs in a ska band? No?
No, but I'll keep my options open. That's
Right?
yeah, that could be a good future career endeavor. I think I won't have to slum it in board games anymore after that. I can my
I
ska
just
dreams can come true.
I'm getting all of the pictures and I resent it. Ah. The end of a trombone has the thing in it, right?
A bell?
The
There's
so there's the
there's a silencer thingy that you can put in the
A
end of it,
mute?
right?
bumper or mute.
Bumper?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's
You can. The
not
part?
necessarily. Yeah, it gives it more of a reverby kind of sound or something.
So maybe that's the hot dog
Oh, I don't know about that.
mute thing. Yes.
All I can say is that there's one. So it's a dedicated deck game. Everyone's got their own dedicated deck to make these trombone combos and extend the trombone on the table. And there's one card in everyone's dedicated deck called Hot Dogs, where you can play hot dogs on other players' cards that you can only get rid of if you summon the baboon to eat the hot dogs. But on the hot dog card, there's a picture of a trombone and just shooting out hot dogs. And we never explain it. It just looks good. It's silly. It's bizarre, and it's funny in the same vein that the game is funny. It doesn't. It never gives you an explanation of why. It just is, and I really like the confidence of that approach, and I really like that players will laugh when they're paying attention.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. The whole thing is colorful and silly in a general sense, but there's going to be a lot of moments where people are like, "Why is this doing that?" And I like that style of humor. I like that not over explaining, especially. Um, so yeah, really happy with it. Really, really pumped to get that out there and show people these baboons, hot dogs, and sometimes trombones.
Incomprehensibly, right? I know that George is making a really nice dinner tonight. I'm really looking forward to it, but at the same time, I just want a hot dog.
A
And that's
glizzy,
your
as it
fault because
were.
I don't like hot dogs. But right now I want one.
Yeah, that's play some trombone, eat some hot dogs, hang out with the baboon for sure. That's
Yeah,
all very
yep,
appealing things.
that's the banana
Right?
peeling.
So what's after
Oh,
trombone? It's a banana. What's after trombone champ for you, Jason?
so that'll be Cat versus Human. I'm doing with Pizza Cake Comics. So that is a game where you're just cats and you're just just trying to annoy your owners, and it's a little more general theme wise than I normally do. But I think we get a little dark sometimes with how evil the cats are, and I think as a humor mechanism, I think that totally works. And Ellen from Pizza Cake Comics was the perfect person to draw it. If you type it in Google, it's a style where you might not know the name of the comic, but you've probably seen it online before. She's also a fellow Canadian. She's Halifax, which is kind of fun.
It makes it
Um,
even better.
And you
yeah,
can't go wrong with a cat game, right? Right, Jason?
yeah,
Except that
yeah.
one time when the cat game theme was not working.
Yeah, we had I did another game called Self Careless, which is basically like it's a relatable game, 1 to 2 players, and you're just trying to balance a day in your life. And then we had an expansion where you're a cat trying to stop the human from balancing their day, and I'm like, oh, okay. I feel like there's more humor here. I like this concept because it was added to that game kind of as an afterthought, but it worked for what it was trying to do there, and so I wanted to kind of blow that up for a future game and do something a little different with it.
But
Um,
wasn't the Neckbeard game originally a cat theme and that
oh
didn't work?
yeah. The first Neckbeard game has this weird like cult following, and for years people have been asking for a sequel at conventions. And in terms of games that people replay a lot and come back and talk to me about, that was one of my top ones. And so I would occasionally bug the designer because the Neckbeard series is the one series where I didn't design or write the games. I helped develop a little bit and I publish it. And so I kept kind of prodding the designer, but he was working on this wholesome cat game called Chonky and Friends, I believe. And it looked good, and it played well, and he got a good reaction to it. But I guess he was having a little trouble with the sellability And so I suggested doing a neckbeard adventure game, because I think that would be a lot of fun, and maybe that'll still be a thing. Who knows? But eventually, we're like, okay, what about this? What about we take those great mechanics that you like, that you're proud of, we put a neckbeard theme on top of that, and so we did that, and then a few other things changed because we added that new theme. And then, yeah, we're really happy with how that turned out. It's originally the name was Revenge of the Chad, Le Neckbeard, Revenge of the Chad, and I had this out of shape, horrible neckbeard fighting a Chad, and it was like a Revenge of the Sith kind of parody cover. But then Jonathan, the designer, was like, "Well, Chad's not really a big part of the game. We shouldn't do that one." And we're like, "Okay." And then we just workshopped ideas, and we called it Quest for Love. And so the cover has a neckbeard holding a body pillow with a woman on it, but the woman on the pillow is repulsed by the neckbeard. So the joke is that the pillow doesn't like him.
Even the pillow doesn't want that.
Yeah.
Even the pillow. Poor neckbeards.
So, but
But
I feel like
mechanically,
that series is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
sorry, mechanically that game really interested me as well because of the way that it's kind of it's basically a spatial trick taker is the way that George described it, which I thought was really interesting.
That's
So
really good. Yeah.
you have these cards which are the waifu cards, and you're attempting to surround them with your neckbeards and I suppose persuade them to tolerate you enough so that you can take that trick in a way. And I just thought that was a really interesting, like it's a really cringy thing to explain, which is exactly what it should be for the game theme. But it's also really interesting mechanically. And I thought that was a really interesting intersection.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was the first convention I've had that game at. No, the second since it came out. And it was really great to see just people's reactions to it after they bought it, they played it, and came back. And I actually got to play some games too, which I don't often play games that I've made after the release because I'm always working on the next thing. And so I sat down with George and we played some games, and I was like, oh yeah, it's fun. Of course it is. Because once it's released, it's like, okay, the job becomes promotion and getting it
Yeah.
out there and logistics and move the units kind of thing. So.
But you actually got to do that a few times at PAX because there were people who came over and wanted to know how to play games, and because we were there, you could go and actually play the games at the tables.
Yeah, that was so helpful, you guys. That was a lot of fun for me, and just sitting down with random people and doing something different other than the enthusiastic kind of thing. So,
Kat, I wanted to ask you a question.
Okay.
What did you learn from working in somebody else's booth?
Oh, well, I think the biggest thing that I learned was how to cope with selling out.
Oh,
as
cool.
in when games sell out, not being a sellout. Because
that's not very punk. Selling out is not at all being punk.
Guilty.
Well, so generally when I worked at craft fairs and things like that, a lot of the things that I sold were one-offs. So it wasn't a case of selling out of something because I only had one pair of that particular type of earring. So that it wasn't a case of, I have to remember to bring this many of this or anything. I just brought all my stock, everything that I had, and I sold as I sold. And this is a completely different situation. What's it like? How many games should I bring? How soon should I aim to sell out of them? Because the idea obviously would be to sell out of everything if you can. And so it was really, obviously, because you flew in, you had to make plans about, how many can I afford to ship over by post, basically, and all those sorts of things, and what can I bring in my suitcase? And that's something that we're going to have to do for a lot of the conventions we attend as well, because Portland is a long way from most of those locations, and we're not going to be driving. So it was those sides of it were really interesting. And so I've been sort of thinking, okay, so if we sell out of this, what do I want to do, and what signage do I want, and how do I plan for it, and all those sorts of things. And do I sell my demo copy or not?
Right. Yeah. It's I'm always surprised that people if there's a sellout, they can often be so excited to get the game that they'll even buy the demo copy. So you give them whatever discount because it's been opened. And it's always nice that they're really, really happy to get that, and that they do want an open game in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you learned a whole bunch of stuff. I think I do it a little differently than most, And there's probably a lot of things other booth people can teach you as well. But I definitely have my unique kind of way I've been doing it for years, and it's been serving me well enough.
I think, yeah, learning to chill out a bit about stuff as well. Like you're just so relaxed. I was like, okay, all right, this can work. I can do this. So that was
Yeah.
really good. But yeah, learning that selling out was good, and that it felt okay not to have
Oh
these
yeah.
things because I've got those things, and just how you handled all of that and how you talk to people and all that. So yeah, it was really cool basically being able to be part of someone else's booth and learn, what the audience is like and how to talk to them about, because your games are all really different as well. The 5
Yeah.
games that we
Thanks.
had there were all very different games. And trying to figure out which person would be interested in which game and which person just wants a quick overview of all 5 and or all 4 or all 3 or all 2 because we
Yeah.
kept selling out. We got down to only 2 games by the end of its end.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great.
That
I could put
was
the extra games in my suitcase and fly back, and that was
Yeah.
amazing.
That was really cool. Like my aim was right. I'm going to make sure that you've only got stuff to go in your suitcase by the end of this. So that was because I like to sell,
Yeah.
um,
And
and
then
it was really cool to have that sort of.
the reason that anyone would want to sell out is, obviously I wish I had the perfect amount of games, but there's always some guesswork. So you don't want to have a huge stack of extra games they need to ship back, just because it's just so expensive. And I'm cross border as well, which is also annoying. But I've
And
got
there's so little
Such a big
margin in the
hassle.
game as well. Like by the
yeah,
time you've paid to ship it to the convention and then back from the convention, you've pretty much lost almost all of your profit on that game.
not
In the
necessarily, but
Or not on the
there's
little
certainly
ones. Yeah.
situations where you can lose your profit if you have to do a big double ship. Like a lot of part of my business model is, I have a lot of smaller games, which kind of started off as like a way to kind of simplify. I know the industry wisdom is make the box a big square size, but having smaller games has been a huge benefit to me because I can usually ship a few cartons to a show and I don't need to ship pallets. And then with BubbleNet coming up, that'll probably be a pallet game or a road trip game kind of thing. So it's definitely a balancing act. And the first few conventions, if you know a person that can take games back with them, or be easier than going to FedEx and shipping them back yourself, that might be a good way to do it. So you can kind of like check out see what the demand is and kind of read the room, kind of thing. So you definitely don't want a ton of extras. If you're new with the game, established companies that have been doing this for years and have unlimited resources, that's a whole different thing. But for us
That gets
indie
absorbed
people
by
in the
that.
trenches, we got to be careful with that.
Mm,
Beware the shipping costs.
yep. And the I can't drayage, of course, because
Yeah.
Drea, yeah. The drayage cost is often what really hits hard on those. Like
Yeah,
if you're at the point where you're having to pay those extra fees to get your games in and out of the event, that
Yeah,
can.
so for people who don't know what drayage is when you're paying, like, union staff of the facility that the convention's at to load and unload your stuff. You can take it from the loading dock, you can take it to the loading dock, but from the loading dock to your booth, you cannot touch it.
and
Depending on how you bring it in. So if
Yeah.
you bring it in completely yourself, you can do that and it just costs. So like if you have it shipped to your hotel room and then you carry it in yourself, you can do it depending on the rules for the particular convention center.
Yeah.
So some convention centers you can't bring in your own little hand truck either. And some you can, some they've got one for you, like at PAX West where they just lent you one. That was amazing.
yeah, that was good how they did that. Not a lot of conventions will do that. But yeah, and just to give listeners a sense of cost, it's like a pallet or two can be 1,000 plus. Like it starts adding up really quickly just bringing it from the dock to your booth. So one hack that I've had with that, again, it's beneficial because I have smaller games. But even with a big square game, I can still see this working. So ship your games to the hotel, and then hand carry them over. Most hotels will accept it for free. Sometimes they'll charge you a per box fee, but it's usually pretty reasonable if they do. Um, and then, so if you have like a big square game where there's like maybe 6 in a carton, I've shipped 15 boxes before, and hotel people are nice, and they're nice to the people staying there. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, they're gonna hate this, they're gonna yell at me, but no, they're always polite about it. I take my boxes, and it's great, and I save $1,000. So if that's a possible solution for you or anyone listening that might be setting up at shows, then it's the hotel hack has been a lifesaver for me.
Absolutely. Is there any so normally what we do at this point is we'll talk about a few extra little like how to contact people and things like that, and then we're going to ask you for some other advice.
Sure.
So maybe have a little think about that while we do that, but so that you've because I was about to ask you for some more advice and I'm like, no, save it. So Sen, do you want to do
Yeah,
the
sure.
bit?
All right. So, well, you can come find me at Senfeng Lim on Twitter and Blue Sky. And Kat, where are you?
Drea Inc. on all the things.
And can they also talk to George there if they want to talk to George?
Yes, you
Sure.
can. Sometimes
Awesome.
you'll get George. You're
Ah.
most likely to get George if it's email, though.
Oh, okay. And then you can reach both of us at Meeple Syrup on all the things, including things like Instagram that I just don't understand. There you go. If you want to reach Jason, how can people reach you?
JasonAnarchyGames.com, and then it links to all the other places from there.
Right. So drinkingquest.com, Jason Anarchy at drinkingquest.com, all
Yep.
those things. Yeah. If you want to work with Jason, give him a shout. If you have opportunities that Jason could take part in, offer them.
Yeah,
And yeah.
And if anyone's looking for advice, they're doing their first game, I'm usually happy to chat with people. And then Sen, it's not as good as your list, but I also have a list on my site of like, oh, first time designer, here are some things to consider.
I'm sure it's just
you know,
fine. It's
oh,
That's
awesome.
awesome.
It's amazing.
But
also, if you want to see Jason in action, if you come to like something maybe like Anime North or something in Toronto, you can watch Jason play D&D until they kick him out of a room.
yeah. Oh,
Because
you
that
heard
happened
about
this
that
year.
one, eh?
Oh yeah.
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 Oh, we're doing the flex, eh? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
He
there we go.
he also has
Jason
pretty
in
big
action.
biceps.
Yeah, I've been
That's
tweeting
right.
about my biceps for years and how good they are. So I sometimes at conventions people walk by the booth and scream, "Nice biceps!" And it's been a real confidence booster.
There you go. And if you'd like to help us keep our lights on, you can go to patreon.com/maple and donate. Final advice, Jason, what is the final piece of advice you have for our listeners today? Our viewers, you can see us.
Yeah,
It could be about anything.
Yeah, if you're looking to release your first game independently, try and be smart about your costs. Try and be realistic about how the game will appeal to people. Put money into advertising so people know about it, but maybe don't put money into other things that will not bring eyeballs to your campaign or however else you're going to release the game.
Right.
So just be wary of costs if you're the one on the line for it. And then once your game is kind of out there and you have a sense of how people respond to it, I feel like that's when you can get a little more adventurous.
Yeah, sounds good. That's good advice.
Very,
And if
very
you're
sensible advice.
looking to support from a very unsensible guy,
Yeah.
Jason Sensibility was my other running name I was going to call myself, but
there you go.
Yeah.
If you want to support Jason's next project, be on the lookout for Trombone Champ, the official card game version, right?
Yep.
And that'll be coming to Kickstarter sometime soon.
In a few
Quite
weeks,
soon.
yeah, October sometime. Yeah,
October sometime, before Halloween or after. No, yeah, so it has to be before Halloween. Halloween's at the end of October, so
yeah.
I don't remember these things.
Yeah, and if you want an early sign-up link, just look for that Trombone Champ graphic on my site, and then that'll lead to a mailing list where you can be notified day one.
You can be notified on announcement.
And there'll be some kind of trombone-related free thing you get if you're an early backer too.
Ooh.
Just figuring that out right now.
Or a hot dog.
Or we'll mail you one hot dog. It'll be great.
It'll be
actual hot dog.
Rancid, but also great.
Just the sausage.
Yeah.
It'll still be just fine. The amount of preservatives.
You
can still eat it.
There's a lot of preservatives in there. And then Cat vs. Human is currently out now? Or is it after that one?
No, that's my next game. But
the next one after
this is just the first time I talked about it anywhere.
Scoop.
So as a designer publisher, now I'm starting to get a feel for this. Now that it's public, I'll see how people respond to that. And I will adjust accordingly.
Yeah, there you go. And Kat, what is happening next week on the Meeple Syrup Show?
So next week, I hope we have got Morgan coming to talk to us about game design from a graphic design perspective. So Morgan's been helping us with the graphic design for BubbleNet, which is
Awesome.
why I pointed above me, and has been very good at basically leading us first timers through the process. We're about to start sending our files to the publisher, so we've got we're the publisher to the manufacturer. So we're about to hit that very exciting, we needed a graphic designer for this bit stage. So it's going to be really interesting to talk about that. And we'll also be able to talk about things like the hierarchy of design and why you would choose to put things in particular places and all that kind of stuff. So if you're one of the people who's been like, I don't know how to make my cards work, or I'm not sure what should be on the cover of my game or what should be on the back, all those sorts of things, Morgan knows those answers and how to write rule books and lay them out and all that kind of stuff. So that's what we'll be talking about.
Oh, hey, Jason, you said that your lovely pictures that you've graced us with here,
Oh yeah,
a lot of the really, really good ones, probably something like this one,
yeah.
and that
Oh,
one,
yeah.
and this one. Who's the photographer? Because it's lovely.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to Todd Patriquin. He does professional board game product shots, and he's amazing.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so yeah, he's on Instagram and every social media, and it's just a lot of like really sexy board game shots. And it's like there's like a whole industry where every day it's just like beautiful shots of board games, and it's like, okay, I'm never gonna play this, but that's a great picture. And it's if you're running ads or something, you want the best photo you can get to get people interested, and they click it and learn more kind of thing. But yeah, he's a total pro, and it took me a few years before I could find someone on that level. So
How do you
yeah,
spell his name?
so the first name is Todd, Todd. Last name is Patriquin, Patriquin.
All right, we're gonna that.
Got it.
There we go, Todd Patriquin,
I think
and you're
he's
gonna have to
also
go
West
find the
Coast
one.
too, Kat. So he might be in your neck of the woods. I'm not sure exactly where.
Vancouver, Washington,
Oh yeah, there you have it.
Yep.
I believe. All
Got
right,
it.
everybody. We will see you all soon. Go take a look at Todd's Instagram. It's pretty. And we will talk to you soon, Jason. We'll see you at a con nearby at some point
Absolutely,
soon, I'm sure.
Thanks you.
for sure. And thanks so much for having me.
Excellent,
This was
excellent.
great. Always a pleasure to chat.
Anytime.
It's been really good.
All
Thank you.
right. Everybody else, we'll see you later. We'll see you next week when we talk about graphic design.
Bye, everybody.
Woo!
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.